Am I the a-hole for refusing to share my apartment with my sister who keeps having kids she can't afford? Okay, I, 29F, need some perspective here because this whole situation has gotten way out of hand, and I'm honestly questioning whether I'm in the wrong. I'm married to my husband, Sean, 30M, and we live in a small apartment. It's cozy, but we make it work. We don't have a lot of extra space, and we've always been careful with our finances. We're working hard to save up for a house, and because of that, we're very intentional about our budget. We don't want to take on anything extra. No unnecessary spending, no major financial risks. Now, here's where things get complicated. I have a younger sister, Rachel, 25F, who has been struggling financially for a while. She's a single mom of 3 kids, ages 6, 4, and 1. And while I love my nieces and nephews, it's been hard watching Rachel's life spiral out of control. She's had trouble holding down a job and has been in and out of relationships, all of which have contributed to her unstable financial situation. To make matters worse, she recently announced that she was pregnant with her 4th child. I can't help but feel like this is a pattern. Rachel has never really been able to get her feet under her, and yet she keeps having kids. I get that children are a blessing, but I'm frustrated. She's been on government assistance for as long as I can remember, and it's just never enough. The weight of it all seems to keep piling up on her, and I'm worried about what it's doing to her mental health, her kids, and honestly, our entire family dynamic. About a month ago, Rachel called me in tears. She was facing eviction because she couldn't pay rent and had no place to go. She asked me if she could move in with me, bringing all the kids. She said she had nowhere else to turn, and she was desperate. I felt bad for her. Of course, I wanted to help, but when I thought about it more, it just didn't make sense. We don't have the space. Our apartment is small, and it's already cramped with just Sean and me. I knew this wasn't a practical solution, and even though I wanted to help, I didn't want to set us all up for failure. I also didn't want to send the message that Rachel could just keep making these decisions and expect others to bail her out. That sounds harsh, but it's a pattern I've seen time and time again. And I've started to realize that her behavior isn't going to change if we keep enabling it. I love her, but I've seen her make the same mistakes over and over again, and it doesn't seem like anything ever sticks, so I told Rachel that I couldn't let her stay with us. I tried to be as kind as possible about it, explaining that we didn't have the space and that it wasn't something we could afford. I even offered to help her with rent for a month or help her find resources for emergency housing, but she refused. She said that was not good enough and that she was falling apart, and I wasn't doing enough to support her. She was absolutely devastated, and I felt terrible about it. I didn't want her to think that I was abandoning her, but I had to be honest with her. I don't want to take on more than we can handle, and I don't want to be responsible for decisions she's making that are affecting her and her kids. I also knew if I let her move in, it would be a massive strain on our already fragile situation. The real mess started when our mom, 56F, got involved. She called me a few days after I told Rachel no, and she was livid. Mom has always been the type to expect a lot of sacrifice from family, but this was different. She said I was turning my back on Rachel when she needed me most, and that family is supposed to stick together no matter what. She said that my priorities were messed up, and I should be putting family first, especially since I'm the responsible one. I tried to explain that Rachel's situation wasn't about just helping her out temporarily. It was about setting boundaries. I told her I loved Rachel, but I couldn't keep enabling her to make bad decisions. I explained that I couldn't risk my own family's future, and I wasn't going to put myself or Sean in a position where we'd be financially stretched thin for something we couldn't control. Mom didn't take it well. She kept accusing me of being selfish and not understanding what Rachel was going through. She even said I was becoming too much like Dad, which hurt because my dad has always been emotionally distant, and I've worked hard to avoid being like him. She told me that if Rachel doesn't have me, she doesn't have anyone, and that I was breaking up the family. The guilt hit me like a ton of bricks. It wasn't just that Rachel was upset. Now Mom was angry too. I felt like I was stuck between a rock and a hard place. Sean has been supportive throughout all of this, but I can tell he's getting frustrated with the situation. He doesn't want to see me constantly torn between what's right for our family and what's expected of me as a sister and daughter. He says I've done enough and that I need to stand firm with my decision, but even he is starting to worry about the strain this is putting on me emotionally. I can tell he's also worried about what it might mean for our future if we continue taking on these kinds of responsibilities. We're just starting out in our marriage and trying to build something stable, and every time I get pulled into this drama, I feel like it sets us back. I've also had a few conversations with close friends who think I'm in the right, but the voices from my family are louder, and it's hard not to feel guilty. Rachel continued to send me angry texts, each one more venomous than the last. She'd call me selfish, say I didn't understand how hard her life was, and accuse me of turning my back on her kids. Some days, I would just stare at my phone, not knowing what to say back. I was torn between feeling guilty for not helping and knowing deep down that I had made the right decision. But every time I saw one of those messages, it stung. It made me question if I could have done something differently. A few days later, Rachel reached out again, this time through a voicemail. Her voice was shaky, and she sounded defeated. I hesitated before listening to it, my heart already bracing for the impact of whatever she would say. Hey, it's me. Look, I know you're mad at me, and I get it, but I'm trying to keep it all together, you know? I didn't mean for everything to fall apart like this. I just, I don't have anywhere else to go. I don't know what else to do, and I can't keep living like this. I need my sister. Please, just think about it, okay? The message was enough to make me reconsider. It wasn't just the desperation in her voice, but the underlying vulnerability that cut through the anger. Rachel wasn't asking for handouts. She was begging for support, but I couldn't ignore the fact that it had all been her decisions that led to this point. Her constant cycle of poor choices, her unwillingness to take responsibility for her actions. I'd seen it for years, and I had done my best to help in ways that didn't compromise my own life. I decided to call her back, but I didn't want the conversation to be too emotional. I needed to keep things clear and not get swept up in the guilt. When she picked up, the first thing she said was, "You're still mad at me, aren't you?" It wasn't a question, but a statement. I could hear the hurt in her voice. "I'm not mad," I said, trying to keep my tone neutral. I just, I don't think it's a good idea for you to move in with us. I've told you that. I'm sorry, Rachel. I don't want you to think I'm abandoning you, but you need to figure this out on your own." There was silence on the other end for a long moment. Then she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why? Why won't you help me? You're the only one who can." I felt the weight of those words. Why couldn't I help? I loved her, but I had to keep reminding myself that this wasn't about me. It wasn't about my guilt or her sadness. It was about creating a sustainable life for myself and Sean, and putting up clear boundaries so Rachel could understand that her decisions had consequences. "I am helping you," I said firmly. "I've offered to help with rent. I've tried to point you in the right direction for resources. I've even tried to talk to Mom and see if she'd pitch in. But Rachel, this is your responsibility. I can't keep doing this for you." There was another long pause, but this time, I could hear her sniffle. "I'm just so tired. I've tried everything, and it's never enough. I keep thinking things will get better, but then they don't. I just wanted one person to be there for me." And that was when it hit me. The frustration wasn't just about the kids, the money, or the living situation. It was about her feeling like she was stuck in this endless cycle. She felt like she was failing, and part of that failure was a result of constantly depending on everyone else to bail her out. I had always been the one she turned to, the one who tried to smooth things over, but I had to accept that I couldn't be her savior anymore. "I'm here, Rachel. I'll always be here for you," I said, my voice softening. but I can't be the one to fix everything. You've got to make the changes for yourself." She let out a sob, and I felt my heart break for her. I wasn't sure if I had said the right thing, but it was the truth. She had to figure out her own path forward. The next few days were tense. My phone was still filled with messages from Rachel, each one more desperate and pleading than the last. She started calling my mom even more frequently, and I could hear the frustration in Mom's voice when she talked to me. "You need to do something. Your sister is falling apart. This isn't just about money, it's about family." I wasn't sure what to say to that. What was I supposed to do? I couldn't fix it all. I couldn't be the one to solve every problem Rachel created. Then came another call from Mom, but this time, her tone was different. She wasn't angry. She was quieter, almost apologetic. "I talked to Rachel," she said, her voice weary. "She's devastated, and I'm not sure how much longer she can hold it together. I know you don't want to hear this, but I think you might need to rethink your decision. You're her last hope." I didn't know how to respond to that. There was so much pressure building from all sides. Mom was pleading with me to be the bigger person, to make the sacrifice, and to not let our family fall apart because of my boundaries. But every time I thought about it, I saw the same pattern in Rachel's behavior, and I couldn't ignore it. What was I teaching her if I let her come live with us? That it was okay to avoid responsibility? That it was okay to keep making the same mistakes and expect everyone else to fix them? Sean and I had another conversation about it that evening. He knew how torn I was, and he was starting to worry about the emotional toll it was taking on me. "I get that you feel bad," he said gently, "but you can't save her. You've done so much already. If we let her move in, it's going to take a toll on us. On you." I knew he was right. I was exhausted, physically and emotionally. And even though I knew my family was disappointed in me, I had to stay strong in my decision. As the days dragged on, I felt like I was walking on eggshells with my family. Rachel continued to reach out, but every message seemed to bring more pressure. She was desperate, and I could hear it in every text, every phone call. Sometimes I'd read her words, and I'd want to cave. I wanted to pick up the phone and tell her that we'd figure something out, that she could come stay with us and everything would be fine. But then I'd remember all the reasons I couldn't, reasons that seemed to grow clearer with each passing day. Mom had been relentless in her calls, and she wasn't backing down. "You're breaking your father's heart too," she said one night, her voice trembling with frustration. "He doesn't understand why you're being so cold. Rachel's his daughter, and you're his only hope for helping her." That one hurt. I knew my dad loved Rachel, and part of me feared I was being too harsh. My relationship with him had always been strained. He was a quiet, distant man who never really expressed much emotion, but I could feel the weight of his disappointment through my mom's words. Sean could tell how much this was eating away at me. He tried to comfort me, but I could see that even he was beginning to feel the tension between us and the rest of my family. Every time I mentioned Rachel or Mom, his face would tighten. He didn't want to argue with me. He never did. But I could see the worry in his eyes. The worry that I would give in and that we'd end up sacrificing our future for a situation we couldn't control. One evening, after another heated argument with Mom about how I should be there for Rachel, I finally snapped. I wasn't angry at Mom, but I was fed up with being the one expected to fix everything. "I've been there for her," I said, my voice shaking with frustration. "I've given everything I can, and it's never enough. I'm always the one who has to give up what little I have left to make things better, but it never changes. Rachel never changes. If I keep doing this, I'll lose everything I've worked for. I'll lose Sean, I'll lose my peace of mind, and I'll lose myself in the process. I can't keep doing this." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. When Mom spoke, her voice was quieter than usual. "I know you feel like this is your burden to carry, but Rachel is your sister, and sometimes family has to sacrifice for each other. I can't carry her anymore, Mom. I whispered, my throat tight. I just can't. After I hung up, I sat in the quiet of the living room, feeling emotionally drained. Sean was there, but he didn't say anything. He knew I was processing it all. I knew he wanted to offer me comfort, but at the same time, he couldn't give me the answer I was looking for. The truth was, he agreed with me. He'd been telling me from the start that I couldn't take on the weight of Rachel's problems. But that didn't mean it was easy for either of us. The next day, I received a call from Rachel that threw me off. She didn't sound angry or upset, like she usually did. Instead, her voice was quiet, almost resigned. I just wanted to let you know I found a place. It's not much, but it's something. I didn't want you to feel like you had to fix it. I blinked, stunned. Wait, what? You found a place? Yeah, she said softly. It's a tiny apartment, and it's not perfect, but it's mine. I'll figure it out. I'm trying, okay? I'm sorry for everything I've put you through. I just, I just didn't know where else to turn. But I'm going to try to make this work. My heart swelled with a mixture of relief and sorrow. I wanted to be happy for her, but I also knew this was the first time in a long time that Rachel had truly taken responsibility for herself. And it wasn't perfect, far from it. She still had a long way to go, but at least she was taking that first step. That's great, Rachel. I'm proud of you, I said, my voice catching in my throat. But remember, you don't have to do it alone. If you need help with anything, anything at all, I'll be here for you. She paused for a moment, as if weighing her next words carefully. Thanks, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I know I've messed up a lot, but I'm trying. I'm really trying. I hung up the phone, not feeling completely at ease, but a part of me finally felt like a weight had lifted. I still didn't know if I'd made the right choice by refusing to let her stay with us, but in that moment, I realized that I had done what I could. I had offered help in every way I could, without losing myself in the process. I told Sean about the conversation, and he smiled at me, a look of quiet pride in his eyes. I'm proud of you for sticking to your guns, he said softly. It was the right call. I hope so, I murmured, still unsure. I hope so. The next few weeks were filled with a strange mix of relief and apprehension. Rachel had moved into her new place, and while it wasn't ideal, I was glad she had a roof over her head. She still checked in with me occasionally, and I tried to offer advice when she asked for it, but it was clear that she was learning to handle things on her own. There was a quiet hopefulness in her voice when she called, something that hadn't been there before. But that didn't mean everything was fine. Mom was still upset with me, and the distance between us only seemed to grow. I tried to talk to her about Rachel, but Mom would always bring the conversation back to how I needed to be more understanding. Family sticks together, she'd say, no matter how hard it gets. And I'd agree. But in my heart, I knew something had changed. I wasn't the same person who would drop everything to fix Rachel's problems. I couldn't be. Not anymore. The tension was still there, a constant undercurrent to every family gathering and phone call. But as time passed, I realized something important. I wasn't responsible for Rachel's happiness. I wasn't responsible for fixing her mistakes. I was responsible for my own life, for my own happiness, and for the life Sean and I were building together. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. But then came another call from Mom. She had some news that would change everything. Her voice was unusually tense, and I could tell right away that something was off. Rachel, she's pregnant again, Mom said quietly. The words hit me like a punch to the gut. I didn't know how to react. I thought things were improving, and now it felt like the cycle was starting all over again. Rachel had promised she was going to get her life together, but here she was, in another mess. She's not sure what to do, Mom continued. And you know she can't afford another baby, but she's scared. She's asking if she can move back in with you, just for a little while. I felt a wave of frustration flood through me. After everything I'd done to help, after everything I'd sacrificed for her, I was still expected to be the one to bail her out. I had told myself that I couldn't do it anymore, that I couldn't keep putting my life on hold for her, but now I was being asked to make that choice again. I tried to stay calm. Mom, I can't just keep doing this. I've offered help before. I've given advice. I've helped financially, but I can't let her come live with us again. It's not healthy for either of us. But Mom's voice cracked when she spoke. She's your sister, and she's scared. She needs her family. That hit hard. I knew Mom was right. I knew Rachel was scared, and that she probably didn't know where else to turn. But I also knew that if I let her move back in, I'd be enabling the same cycle of bad decisions I'd been trying to break for years. I spent the rest of the day in a haze. Sean and I talked about it, but he was as torn as I was. He understood my need to maintain boundaries, but he also saw how hard this was for me. It felt like no matter what I did, someone was going to be hurt. If I said yes, I'd feel like I was sacrificing myself all over again. If I said no, I might be pushing my sister away for good. So, here's where I'm at. Rachel is asking to move in with us again, and I don't know if I'm wrong for saying no. I feel like I'm being selfish, but at the same time, I've been there for her so many times, and it's never enough. I've tried helping in other ways, but nothing ever changes. I'm worried that if I let her back in, I'll lose my sense of self, my peace of mind, and even my relationship with Sean. Am I the a-hole for refusing to let her move back in? Or is it okay to draw a line after all this? What would you do in my situation? I really need some perspective here. If you found this story relatable, or if you've ever had to make a tough decision for your family, don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. Would you have let your sister move in again? Or would you have drawn the line like the person in this story? Make sure to like and subscribe for more stories like this.